Hey, so my name is Helen. I'm the Executive Director of Student Energy, and I've been working in the climate youth energy space for just under 7 years now, which is wild to say. I came from a very non-energy, non-directly climate-related background as well, and so I started with student energy right out of my undergrad, but prior to that, I was working on a lot of youth empowerment, global community building, social justice focused initiatives while I was still in university. And I was actually studying art at the time. So a really kind of far stretch from the world of climate and energy. And I would say that's actually shaped a lot of my approach to being involved in this space and especially taking on more of a leadership role with an organization like Student Energy, as I've always been really passionate throughout my life about this idea of kind of creating space for people and especially young people to just feel like they have a role to play in addressing some of our world's biggest challenges. So that was always really my big driver. But I didn't really see myself in the climate and energy space until the former head of my current organization kind of took a bet on me and decided, this person has a lot of passion and creative ideas, thinks outside the box a little bit in terms of folks we usually see in the sector who've been here a long time. And that was just such a big learning moment for me to want to do the same for other young people in my space. So yeah, so my background, I also grew up kind of around the world. And so I really developed this kind of strong connection to how can we create this kind of sense of kinship and community at a global level, kind of transcending boundaries and borders, and really instill this sense of kind of responsibility, but also connection to our world and how we can collaborate in new and innovative ways to solve challenges from climate, but also, to all of the other connected issues like gender justice, energy access, you name it. Yeah, that's a little bit about me. Young people simply aren't being supported and empowered at scale, where we have a quarter of the world's population who really feel like they have the tools and the confidence to enact change. And that's such a massive opportunity for not just action towards the climate crisis, but also towards all of those interconnected issues that young people are more often than not just as passionate about as well. So my big bet is we need to scale a movement of young people who are supported with access to education, to training programs, to direct funding, and to each other in community to really create deep, sustained systems change. If we engage young people now, like a 25-year-old, then 10 years down the line, when we probably have seen different political changes, we've seen different people head up organizations, you have those young people who started 10 years ago who have been supported and feel connected to these issues and been empowered to stay engaged, continuing to steer that forward. And I think that's a real challenge that we've seen in this space is we just don't see that continuity beyond 4-year cycles or 5-year cycles or whatever it looks like in kind of the region or context we're working in. So it's really about scaling that platform. Student Energy offers one, and we have a 2030 vision that's really anchored around this. We're focused on empowering young people, a movement of over 50,000 young people in 130 countries to accelerate a sustainable, equitable, and just energy transition. And so for us, our 2030 vision, our big bet is what would it look like if we empowered thousands of young people around the world to take on renewable energy projects in their communities, to support with education and awareness building, to create more public support for climate and energy policies. What would it look like to have a generation of young people who are engaged on clean cooking solutions? And really looking at how can we engage this quarter of the world's population in solutions. I think in particular, it's feeling more resonant these days as we've seen kind of social polarization start to really impact our ability to sustain progress as well. And so another aspect of our big bet that I'm really excited about is, when young people feel like they have agency and have support and are really seen as partners, not just beneficiaries or not just apathetic kind of groups of people, it really changes the way that they feel connected to and invested in policies that are being set out for them, the governments that represent them, the companies around them. And so you create this really active and engaged community that ultimately becomes this active and engaged society over time. So it's this real kind of opportunity as well to reduce polarization, rebuild trust with young people. But in tangible terms, it is the scale up of these programs. So everything from entry level learning about the energy system, just at a baseline, never been engaged before, don't know where to start. Very much my experience when I started with student energy, all the way through to you want to be a clean energy entrepreneur. What does that look like? How do you conduct a feasibility study? How do you manage things like technology procurement? And so really kind of taking young people through every step in their journey to drive solutions that are impactful for their communities, that are meaningful to them, and that can really allow them to have that confidence and that opportunity to create real change. At the core of how we bring those big bets principles into our work, I really come back to the youth centric nature of our programming. So for us, whenever we're developing a new project, a new program, typically kind of centered around training and support for young people, we actually commit to a process that engages those young people we're serving and we're working with into that design process. So being willing to really experiment and be creative with the community that we're really trying to serve and engage and empower really allows us to kind of maintain that innovative nature of whatever program we're developing because it's so need centric and it's really not building off of, it is building off of what's been done before, but it's not replicating what we've already seen in the space. If young people are still feeling like there's something missing, we need to be talking to them and to really learn what that is and how we can really shape something that perfectly or imperfectly meets that need and supports them to get that step up. I think my advice is really kind of craft your story. I think even just now, kind of explaining student energy, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much that we're doing that it can be quite hard to kind of focus on what are we actually doing? Education, training, mobilization. What does that look like? And I think that's such an important part of your big bet is if you are going to bring others into your big bet, which is necessary, I believe, for any big bet to scale and be impactful and really reach the people it needs to reach. We need to have a powerful story. And ideally, that story incorporates parts of your own life, but it should just really also describe clearly and accessibly what you're doing in very kind of clear terms, as specifically as possible. I know some are more kind of advocacy and big movement focused, but as specifically as possible so that people can really connect to and get invested and excited about your big bet. Another piece of advice is community is key. I think in the past, in the past, as in like 5 years plus ago, I think there's been such a focus on these kind of silver bullet solutions, these kind of hero types who kind of lead companies that are going to change the world. And I think over time, there's been this real mainstreaming of the fact that if we're really going to address this challenge in a human-centered, need-centered way, we need to come together in community. This needs to be collaborative. We need to empower local communities and folks who are most impacted first before we come in with kind of our solutions. And so community is really key. We need to really invest in building relationships with people that we can learn from, but who should also be kind of leading the change themselves as well. And then lastly, ask for what you need. I think particularly if you're a young person delivering on a big bet, we can often put a lot of pressure on ourselves, feeling like we need to figure it all out ourselves or we need to have all the answers. And we don't have 10 years of experience in this space. Like we're really still in that learning phase. And what I've learned is that other folks who've been around for a bit longer really do want to help, but we need to be clear and specific about what type of help we need. Maybe we need funding, maybe we need mentorship, maybe we need like a technical kind of concept broken down in clear terms, which I need all the time. And so asking for help is so important. We don't need to kind of solve it alone and we shouldn't be solving anything alone. So I think for a big bet to really be impactful, asking for help is absolutely key. Um, really consider how you can get more engaged on intergenerational collaboration. And I say that because it literally applies to anyone, whether you're a young person, not a young person, whether you're young at heart. There is such an important need, I think, right now for in the space that we're at and the time that we're at in facing the climate emergency, but also all of these compounding issues where learning from each other and connecting with each other is so needed. And I think there's been a little bit of a breakdown of trust between generations, but also within society itself. But intergenerational collaboration, I think, is such a rich space of possibility where we really can bring together unlikely allies and folks who have so much to learn from one another, and it can be a really beautiful thing. So think about your role in supporting intergenerational collaboration wherever you're at in your organization, in government, in your community, and try to connect with a young person or connect with a non-young person and learn from them. And I think we all could do a lot more of that and be in a really strong place to face this crisis.